Yellow.
Hi. Sorry, just checking to make sure you could hear me.
Yep. You here to debate?
Yeah. Uh, so you don't have the numbers up. I think you have it listed as three, but the gender-affirming care for minors.
Mm-hmm. What about it?
All right. Uh, the WPATH standards are bad, actually.
I would vehemently disagree, but go on.
Sure. The fact is that the 1 to 3% regret rate is actually indicative of the fact that people who need care aren't getting it because the standards are so tight that people who don't have access to good health insurance to afford therapy can't find therapy that will, work with them on some kind of sliding scale, that kind of issue.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't get to transition, which means
Oh, so
that
are you saying that the WPATH standards are too strict and it doesn't allow for? Oh, okay. I actually my mind could be changed on this. Continue.
okay. So I understand the concern for supplying care when it's not actually the correct thing for the child. But um, something to keep in mind is that it inherently positions trans pain as less important or less meaningful than cis pain
Mm.
because the um, well, regret rates are only 1 to 3%. Um, that says that if it were more than that, the even if it goes up to 30%, right? And it's so well, it's only 30% regret rates. It's on par with knee surgery. If you still look at that by saying, well, 30% is acceptable because it's not there, it inherently balances the pain that I dealt with as a kid. When gender affirming care was not easily available.
Mm-hmm.
Because to be clear, I'm 42, right? In the 90s, it was much harder to get information
Yep.
about trans stuff, right? I knew that I was different. I so I'm not somebody who would say that I knew I was a girl when I was a kid. I don't remember my childhood very well because ADHD, but also because you know the markers that that children use to deal with gender are not the markers that were the things that troubled me. It was when puberty hit, I'm like, oh no, this is not right.
Mm-hmm.
And it it's not body dysmorphia in the way that a lot of your opponent callers reference it, right? But it is uh, a deep incongruence to the point of when I was in my mid 20s, I would feel like basically phantom limb syndrome for my body the way that it should have been, and it caused me such pain that it drove me to the point of considering self harm,
Mm-hmm.
which is nothing that I had ever considered. And I grew up in a not it's a weird thing. So I grew up in a liberal bordering on leftist family, and but also doing martial arts under an extremely conservative instructor. So I picked up a lot of, God, country, family, honor is the first thing,
Yep.
and I ended up leaving that not because I thought they were wrong, but because I thought I was unworthy. And I threw myself into dangerous situation after dangerous situation because I did not value myself. And especially when you have teens or kids whose impulse control is not as finely honed as it becomes later in life, that becomes even more dangerous, right? And so you're putting because it's stricter standards because they're kids and decision making and trying on identities and that kind of stuff, which fair, I understand, but you have to also take that stricter standard in
I do get what you're
context.
saying. I do get what you're saying, and I think there might be something to say in that, because the impulse control is uh, not always the greatest in children, or in teens. I'm sorry, is not always the greatest in teens. It actually might be better to provide gender affirming care so that we don't risk the impulse control of like self harm and things like that.
Sure. And when we're talking about, yeah, exactly. That's sort of where I'm sort of going with it. And the nature of the care can vary from person to person. Sure, absolutely, because people are individuals. We don't
Mm-hmm.
all need just a strict regimen of care. Even when you get into things like cancer care, all those kinds of things, the our favorite comparison, knee surgery, um, you know, those things still need individualized care, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but one thing that really gets me is how, when we're talking about these things with people who don't understand, we talk about it in preventing a negative instead of enhancing a positive, or replacing it with a positive. And it really saddens me because while there's a lot of hard things about being trans, many of them societal or financial, there's also a very strong component of joy in finding who you are, in becoming who you are. And it, when you compare it as like, well, we're just trying to keep people from, being at risk for self-harm, it completely disregards the fact that waiting isn't neutral, and that it is the prevention of joy, the like, to be frank, I used to just sit in my bed trying to sleep, and I would scream into my pillow because I didn't want my parents to hear me, and later because I didn't want my wife to hear me.
Mm-hmm.
And those are significant harms that 5 days ago, I had my 17th anniversary of social transition. Those harms
Congratulations.
didn't go away. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
thanks. But those harms didn't go away,
Mm-hmm.
right? And even though I did not actually engage in self-harm, I still, um, I still deal with those things. I still deal with the damage psychologically was done, and I have to deal with the repercussions of going through a puberty that is not the one that I should have gone through.
Mm-hmm.
The physical repercussions don't go away. Yes, gender affirming care is so much better that I got it than not when I did, but that doesn't make that harm not present, right? Waiting is not a neutral act, even in cases without self-harm.
You know what? I agree. You changed my mind.
Appreciate. I don't have anything else on the list that I feel strongly enough about to talk with you with. So have a good rest of your day and have a good stream.
Yeah, you too. Have a great one.